Greetings, friends. It's Monday, March 9th, and this is your Chapo. Obviously, on the last couple episodes, Felix and I have been talking to people about the war in Iran as that continues to unfold. But on today's episode, we're going to look at how the war might be playing out on the domestic political front. And to that end, we are joined by our friend Will Sommer from The Bulwark and the Online Council of Wills, of which both of us are charter members. Will, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
I want to get into your piece about how the war in Iran is playing out in on the sort of the MAGA online right and like any potential fractures between Trump and his base. But I guess I'd like to just start with my observations of at least over the weekend. I'm gonna read here just a couple examples from this morning. President Trump had this to say on the possibility of the Strait of Hormuz closing as oil prices surge. These ships should go through the strait and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. This was echoed by Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends this morning, where he said, if you want to diminish the Iranian threat, if you want to make sure this ends with complete Iran capitulation, show some guts and go through that strait. I will.
That's such. I love that. That's like what Marge tells Lisa when she gets bullied. Just show some guts. Don't let it get to you. Show that you're the bigger person.
And also,
when
I don't
your
think it's
giant liquid natural gas tanker runs into a mine, killing thousands.
And also, I don't think it's the captains of these ships that really make the decision whether to go through a mined part.
Yeah, that's a very mercantilist view of the world.
Yeah,
that there's just a bunch of free roaming captains that are finding liquid natural gas and oil wherever.
And I would pair those comments with Lindsey Graham's demands that I saw the other day, where Lindsey Graham was essentially demanding that Saudi Arabia commit their military as well to this endeavor. And I guess what I'm saying is it's not exactly an indication that things are going great when the United States is demanding that Saudi Arabia back us up. And Will, I'm just wondering from your observations, are there reasons to believe that Trump himself is already bored of this or rather disappointed that Iran has not surrendered so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were looking for the Venezuela deal where you sweep in, you have some kind of pliable second in command who can take over. And they're not getting that. I mean, Tucker Carlson, for his part, he says Trump really has no idea how the war is being received. It did strike me how over the weekend Trump said, we have come to a deal with Iran. We're going to pick their new leaders. And then immediately after, Iran clearly picked their own leaders. So I don't think, that's working out for him.
I love begging Saudi Arabia to join, which is just yeah, that's the fucking powerhouse in the region. That's the military everyone's afraid of. What is the Trumpist rationale for Lindsey Graham begging for Saudi Arabia to join? That they didn't do it earlier because they wanted everyone to be able to grind XP, and otherwise Saudi Arabia would have just ended the war too quickly. When they and the UAE invaded Yemen, they were getting pushed back into Saudi Arabia. Multiple generals were killed. I don't know, how are they going to do against a much better, larger, and more well-funded fighting force? People have gone back to this joke a lot, but the old thing about the guy who kept feeding stray cats to coyotes, more or less.
Right.
This would be feeding Colombian mercenaries to Iranians.
Well,
yeah, I just want to say one other thing about the idea of the Saudis joining the fight. There's another story I think I told on the show during our first year of existence, but one of my earliest internet friends was an Egyptian guy whose family were in the Egyptian military during the 6-Day War, and he told me a story that I will never forget, and I definitely told it in 2016 in regards to Saudi military prowess. And he talked about his uncles being in a foxhole during that war, and he said that they saw the Saudis roll up with a convoy of trucks to get into the foxhole, and in the trucks, in the beds of the trucks, were shade lounges, couches, canopy beds. And the Egyptians were like, what the fuck are you doing? And the Saudis went, we're joining the fox. We're getting in the foxhole with you.
On the chaise lounge, all day long, on the chaise lounge. To me, I mean, like in the demands for Saudi Arabia to get involved, perhaps this was what Marco Rubio was referring to when he made his comments about unleashing Chang the other week. I don't know if you guys caught that, but like,
yeah,
you know, as on this show, as very close observers of the history and career of George H.W. Bush, you may remember that saying that I'm going to unleash Chang was a thing that George H.W. Bush did during as part of his tennis game. This was sort of a taunt he did about his serve. But really what it was referring to was it was him making fun of the insane Birchers in the Republican Party who kept demanding of him that they unleash Chiang Kai-shek to refight the Chinese Communist Party and his sort of contempt for that. Marco Rubio seems to have rebranded it into something that like is a threat rather than an insult to the people who he's talking about.
Do you know the backstory for why Marco says that?
No, why?
Jeb, so the provenance of earnestly saying unleash Chang, it actually goes back to the 2016 GOP primary. Jeb was saying this before and during the primary, during a short-lived campaign, as his like, whenever people would ask him about China and Taiwan, of course. And I remember us talking about it on the show then, as it was very illustrative of the sort of the degeneration of that party, how stupid everyone was, that this guy's son couldn't understand that this was an ironic joke, much less the fact that the idea of unleashing a guy who previously lost that civil war to fight it again is manifestly hilarious and idiotic. But Jeb, who was close with Marco during his rise, both being fellow neocons, gave Marco a sword that allegedly belonged to Chang that I have to believe he got that at a mall. I don't believe he had a sword from Chiang Kai-shek. But Marco, I think it's in his autobiography or ghostwritten autobiography, says that he received a sword from Jeb just from a legendary warrior named Chang, who could be like a guy from Mortal Kombat from the way he describes it. It's degenerated so much, it's gone from like, we're going to use our proxy who already lost a civil war to fight it again against a larger and more organized China to, Jeb Bush, my mentor, knew this immortal anti-communist from the Mortal Kombat franchise, and I have his sword.
It was the sword from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah. Unleash Goro.
Get over here. Will, you have a piece up called MAGA Already Hates Trump's Iran War. Could you sketch out for us, like, what are the sort of the battle lines here? Like, who are the big sort of online right-wing pundits and influencers? Like, who is coming out or sort of turning their back on Trump as it regards his invasion of or his war against Iran, and like who is sticking with the president?
Yeah, I mean, I think on one hand, you know, in terms of the people who are in favor of the war, it's sort of who you'd expect. It's a lot of Fox News people. It's a lot of like hardcore pro-Israel people like Mark Levine and Laura Loomer. But I think the side that's opposed is probably more interesting. I mean, you've got Tucker, who is claiming to, you know, he flew to the White House several times to sort of beg Trump not to do the war. You've got Candace Owens, who claims that, you know, Charlie Kirk was the first victim, you know, first casualty of the war because they killed him to make the war happen. And then, you know, you've got obviously Nick Fuentes. But maybe most interesting, Megyn Kelly, who sort of goes wherever she thinks things are headed. And so she clearly is like, oh my gosh, I really hate this war.
Yeah, she said that she had serious doubts on her show last Monday, and then of course interviewing Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has like, you know, already left the party, already left politics. But like among people like Tucker, Candace, you know, like you also mentioned the Hodge twins. We all love them. But like, how are they articulating their critique of this war, or like or their opposition to it?
Well, you know, I think it's on a couple angles. I mean, certainly someone like Candace Owens, Tucker as well, has said basically, you know, this is the war for, you know, for Israel, that, you know, Trump has basically been duped into this. On the other hand, I think someone like Megyn Kelly is just like, what's happening here? You know, like a lot of these people, I think, really want to help Trump, but they they just aren't getting any help from the administration. Like, there's been no effort to explain. It's like they want to be the sort of the stooges pushing the war, like we saw in Iraq, but they just are like, I don't even know what the messaging is supposed to be.
So they're like they realize that they have like not been provided with enough convincing talking points, so they have to sort of freelance it on their own, and they realize that they don't really have much to come up with.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like the Saudi Arabia or the Kuwait of the sort of the domestic side, where they're like, look, we don't really know what the point is here. We're not going to stick our necks out unless you give us some more. So, I mean, certainly, someone like Matt Walsh at the Daily Wire, who's like a pretty kind of down the middle, regular pro-Trump guy. He's saying that, we're being asked to trust the plan, it's like QAnon or I guess the specific comparison is to like Fauci and saying, obviously for these people, like, we were told to trust the science and now we're saying trust Trump. I mean, one thing that's been striking to me is how the argument, I think from the pro-war side has been like, look, we all hate the forever wars. We hated Iraq. Obviously they didn't at the time, but now they're saying, but the difference is Trump is just like really, really a lot more competent. And so people like Pete Hegseth are going to win where Donald Rumsfeld could not.
Including comments from Will Chamberlain here, I think is perfectly indicative of that. He says, quote here is, the point of being against regime change wars was not that regime change is inherently bad, but rather that our political and military leadership couldn't pull it off in an efficient and effective manner. When the facts change, you should change your mind. And I talked about this a little bit last week, but like the idea here being that like, okay, like regime change was bad because the George W. Bush administration was too incompetent to do it correctly. But now they're taking a bite of a much bigger apple that like, a regime change in Iran is considerably exponentially more difficult, than what they managed to do in Iraq. And as I said, the people in charge of taking this big bite of the apple are already choking on it and don't know, like, can't even get their story straight about what they are or aren't doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, that the argument is like, we're going to do it right. Unlike the Bush administration, we got the guy who sent the war plans to Jeffrey Goldberg at the Atlantic. This is the guy who can pull it off. So, I mean, it's really a mess. I mean, I think from a messaging point of view, like we talked about, I mean, I think people like Megyn Kelly are pretty willing to get on board for the part where they say, isn't it amazing the power of the American troop? Like, look at that big oil refinery blow up. But they just really don't have any material to do it with.
Did you see I think the Senate Foreign Relations Committee put it out, but it was a Tom Cotton quote about how not only has there been a 47-year imminent war with Iran, which something being imminent for 47 years is just a hilarious concept, but that Trump is finally ending it. Like that seems to be the thing they settled on. Like that it's season 9 of a sitcom, and he's finally resolving the will they won't they question.
Yeah, the argument is that, we don't want forever wars. Trump is going to be Donald the Dove, and we're not going to have forever wars. But he's, in fact, by starting this war, he's ending Iran's forever war against us.
Yeah,
in a sense. In a sense, that like hopefully no one ever fucking tries it again after this disaster.
That's like saying the New York Jets have been an imminent threat to win the Super Bowl for the last 47 years. Another tack I've been seeing among what I would imagine would be like the more hardcore, like dissident right, pseudo neo-Nazi accounts is that like they seem most willing to continue to back Trump, despite the fact that many of them have explicitly said, like, we're voting for Trump to prevent a war with Iran. And like, you'll never see boots on the ground. I think they're saying now is like the attack I've been seeing from like a Captive Dreamer. That's the account I'm talking about. That like, he's like, look, let's be mature about this. Like, you don't get everything you want in politics. Like, maybe this isn't something we all like or like would have voted for, had we known this was going to happen. But like, keep your eye on the prize, which is like the mass deportation of every non-white person in America. So like, Israel gets what they want. In America, an attack on Iran. And like, if we just keep the faith, we'll get what we want, which is the deportation of like, I don't know, between 50 and 100 million people. Well, the problem with that is like, well, Israel's already gotten what they wanted, but it seems to be like the goal of mass deportations would seem to be further out of reach than it ever has been. And then also because Trump himself is like already saying we need to chill out with this. And like, hey, like there's a lot of good people who work in the agricultural food and hospitality industries that, like, really, like, they're good people. We shouldn't, let's not get too bent out of shape over it.
In that same post, he said, it would be one thing if people were saying, I really like what Trump is doing domestically, but I don't like this. But people now want to throw out the whole thing because they don't like the Iran thing, which is just, you better start believing in Brandon stories. Because you're fucking in one, pal. If you torment Will Stancil for long enough, you will become him.
Well, first captive dreamer. This is kind of one of the great fail sons of the second Trump administration. This guy memorably, his dad came out and was like, I hate my racist son. And, he had a kind of a sexy David Koresh profile pic. And then it came out. I don't know have you guys seen what this guy looks like?
Oh, yeah.
He's only got like a cone head, essentially, like just like an enormous forehead. And even a lot of people on the right are they're saying.
So some people find having large foreheads to be.
Well, I was going to say, I don't mean to be picking a fight, with on this issue. It's interesting that the deportations thing has come up. On the other hand, someone like Matt Walsh is saying, I think credibly, he's saying, we're told that we can't get mass deportations because it's logistically impossible, which I think, given that they basically tried this in Minneapolis and it was a huge disaster and they had to pull out. How are they going to do this across the country? But he's saying, so we're told that's too complicated by the Trump administration, but toppling the Iranian government is something we can do in a week.
Yeah, that's not that's a very good point by Mr. Walsh. But I guess I'm interested. Like you mentioned, like among the most prominent critics of Trump's war in Iran is Tucker Carlson, and like I'm really wondering, like, how is he squaring this circle? Because I know he like wants to influence the administration. He thinks of himself as close to the administration, but like, didn't Trump just come out the other day and say that he's no longer MAGA and like he's sort of been kicked out of the movement? And like Tucker seems to be trying to say that like this is all Israel's fault, and we would have had a perfect Trump second term in office if it wasn't for just Israel making him do this. But like, as Felix brings up over and over again, it's hard to make that argument when Trump was already president for 40 years prior to this.
Yeah, Tucker is clearly, all these guys I think are really walking a line, with the exception of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who just comes out and said on Megyn Kelly, she's like, what the fuck is going on? The president's senile. But everyone else is kind of like, oh my gosh, I sure wish Trump, would stop listening to Benjamin Netanyahu. In Tucker's case, he tweeted, pray that the spell will pass. As though Trump's under the sway of like some kind of worm tongue type figure.
It's like, it's not a spell. Like, no spell has been cast, Tucker. You voted for this guy and he won the election. That's not magic.
I love that they're having their very own push Trump to, I don't know, the anti-interventionist right once he's elected, despite years and years of evidence to the contrary. But Brett Cooper, who I put her in a club with that, who's that actor, Glenn something? He was in a movie with Sydney Sweeney.
Glenn Powell?
Glenn Powell, yeah.
Glenn Powell and Brett Cooper, they're two people who were born in like 1995, but they sound like silent film stars. Like they sound like their names make them sound like they were in a movie with Al Jolson. But I see them and they're younger than me. But Brett Cooper had a thing where she was like, let's pray that Lindsey Graham gets a boyfriend so we can stop going to war. And it's like, that wouldn't be a problem if the guy that you went out of your way to elect twice and attempted to elect 3 times didn't keep doing this guy's fucking bidding, despite apparently declaring himself to be his mortal enemy in fucking 2016.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of people are targeting Lindsey Graham. Meghan McCain came out and was just like, they got to stop putting Lindsey out there. He's going crazy. And it's like, that's your dad's homie. That's your uncle, essentially. Like, show some respect.
Yeah. By the way, Felix, you brought up Brett Cooper, and I would just like to use, you just reminded me, I'd like to use this opportunity here to bring out the Chapo Department of Corrections. On our episode about the Pendragon cycle, I referred to the bull jumping scene depicted in episode 1 of that show as referencing the Mycenaean culture. That was an error. It was, in fact, the Minoan culture of the classical antiquity. So, sorry, I have docked my pay, listener. I have punished myself for that grave misapprehension.
Employee Spencer will be deprived of food for 1 month for this error.
But Will, like, you sketch that there's like a lot of high profile MAGA figures have been very critical of Trump on this, based on kind of their, I don't know, sticking to at least their professed values of being like anti-interventionism, anti-regime change, let's fight the war at home on immigrants and liberals, etc. But is there any evidence that this is anything other than a kind of media phenomenon? Because it seems like, as far as Republican or MAGA voters as just Republicans go, they seem to be the only group in this country that it seems to be pretty foursquare supporting the president and this war right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overstate it. I mean, I do think that, like, there was that poll last week that said 85% of Trump voters are backing him on this. So, on one hand, yeah, I think that's true. On the other, I think it's still telling that these people who kind of like rely on staying in their audience's good graces, someone like Megyn Kelly, for example, that I think she can see which way it's blowing and saying, oh, geez, what are gas prices going to look like in 2 weeks? I don't really want to be out here saying, that this war was the greatest thing ever once the worm turns, as it were. I mean, I think that they're, and obviously these guys have an impact on public opinion. So I think if Trump can wrap it up really soon, which seems essentially impossible, I think it'll blow over. But otherwise, I think, he's going to start seeing more and more of kind of like the grassroots people start sounding more like Tucker Carlson.
Well, I mean, to stay with Tucker Carlson, one of my favorite things to observe is like the absolute crusade being waged against, I'm going to use his own nickname for him, Tucker Carlson, which is I think that's pretty good. Mark Levine and Laura Loomer being like the most pro-Israel, the most pro-Iran war. They have fixated on Tucker Carlson as like the apostate in question that must be excommunicated from MAGA. Obviously they're handling the evolution of current events with, I would say, typical and expected calm, even-handedness. And speaking, with a fine even keel to their public comments on this.
Yeah, I mean, they're really going crazy over it. I mean, there's also, I should say, Tucker has like an evil twin brother, or not a twin, I guess, evil brother named Buckley.
Buckley
is like sort of like dissolute Tucker, and all he does is fight with Laura Loomer on Twitter all day. And so this is a few days ago, but Laura was like, she's like, after dealing with you, Buckley, and seeing, Tucker Carlson, I can see why your mother abandoned you when you were 6 years old. She's doing the like, people beat up on deadbeat dads, but what if the kid had bad vibes tweet? She's like, I don't blame your mom for leaving you. I mean, it's getting crazy. I mean, I will say the thing about Tucker Carlson is, this guy, he loves Qatar. And it makes you wonder what's going on. I mean, he claimed to have bought an apartment in Qatar. He went to a Qatar conference and came back the next day and said, maybe Qatar should be our number one ally in the Middle East. So there's a lot of influences here and kind of like agendas at play.
An apartment in Qatar? That's such a weird like, why not he makes I mean, I don't know how much he makes now doing the Tucker show on X, but presumably he could get some sort of housing voucher. An apartment just seems like such a weird choice to me.
I'm with you.
This sort of war of words is also playing out in Tucker's his sort of sponsored nicotine pouch brand called Alp, and they're going at Laura Loomer through Alp promo discount codes, and it was actually the occluded Carlson, the fail brother, Buckley Carlson. It's like, get 25% off your Alp pouches with a promo code Larry Loomer. And he likes to imply that Laura Loomer was in fact a born a man and has transitioned into a woman as Laura Loomer.
That's right, and this is their marketing strategy. I mean, so Alp pouches are kind of like their Zyn knockoff. And Buckley, I don't know if he runs social media for Alp, but it sounds a lot like him. But Buckley's been pushing this idea that Laura was a transgender man or named Larry. And so sort of a Brigitte Macron situation, according to Candace Owens. And so, I mean, and then Alp is saying, get a discount on your rustic pine Alp by using code Larry Loomer. And now Laura is fighting back. And she's going to the FDA, which is reviewing Alp pouches for, I guess, like sort of a permanent release. And she's saying, they're essentially stealing my identity. They're making people think I endorse this product by saying I'm trans.
I like how that's their version of like left-wing people accusing each other of being Democrats.
Bridget Macron getting dragged into this, you know. She's she's a passoid, and Laura Loomer is.
What if that was his thing? He was like he calls her like a medicalist. It's like it's like not. She's a passoid, a medicalist.
You know, Laura's other beef with them is that they have posted these Photoshop pictures of her to look worse. And I will say, you know, Laura's obviously gotten some plastic surgery done repeatedly. I know, I know. So she's had a couple kind of different faces, but you know, people love doing the photoshopped ones, and you know, people then say to me, "I'm pretty sure that's really her face," and it's like, no, you know, I've followed this saga for a long time, and so in this case, they were indeed posting fake ones, and so that's another grievance.
I mean, pretty funny of Laura Loomer to be like, they're slandering my reputation by knowingly posting false things that are offensive.
Yeah. Anyway, here's a 3-year-old who's being sent to America because Israel blew his legs off. He's a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just as a slight digression, Will, have you got a chance to sample any of the Alp pouches being offered by Tucker Carlson?
Well, I can't because they hijacked that truck. You know, so no, I haven't. I'm not a big pouch guy. Do you guys pack lips?
No, I've tried to use the Zyn once, and I found the sensation rather unpleasant. But based on its marketing copy, I think Alp promises even more nicotine than Zyn, which is saying a lot.
I used to dip, which is, you know, it shows how much things have changed. When I was a young man, like pouches, you got made fun of for doing pouches. Like pouches were for girls. But at least with dip pouches, you still spit. Like half the point of this is spitting. To take spitting out of the game is just, I don't get it at all. I tried a Zyn once. I just really don't like it. I don't think I'll go back to dipping, but I definitely don't enjoy that shit. It just feels so medicinal.
Well, you know, they're ramping up the amount of nicotine in Alp. You know, this new brand Alp Drifter has, you know, has I think,
yeah. Yes, enjoy the smooth nicotine flavor of a man unmoored from from community as he wanders town to town.
So John Kasich is like their Joe Camel.
from freight car to rail yard. Yeah, like when the local sheriff is hassling you for vagrancy, just simply pack a mouthful of high intensity nicotine.
The Surgeon General's warnings are just like symbols. It's like a lip with a skull over it.
Oh wait, Will you mentioned the Alp truck hijacking? Could you get into that? Like there was a shipment of Alp that was hijacked. Goodfellas style.
Terrible in the Alp community. Yeah, late last month, a new shipment of the new Alp brand Drifter, which promises tropical flavor and way more nicotine than previous Alp, was hijacked using fraudulent credentials. So this wasn't like a gun in the driver's face situation. This was a little more fancy. And so now Alp has had to delay the shipment. And Laura Loomer, you know, she could not have been happier. She posted. Yeah. Oh, poor Tucker! What a poor guy.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson is having a bad week. Gee, what a shame.
Maybe look at her. What did she know?
And so yes, now the Alp wars have started. I gotta say, like, of the sort of the pro-Iran war, pro-Israel, pro-Trump faction, I really gotta say, Mark Levine is like my favorite character. He's one of my favorite like regime adjacent pundits. Because like just yesterday, I believe he called Trump the first Jewish president, and Trump said he's right. But I love Mark Levine's posting style because, like, you know, repetition is the key. And like in the weeks leading up to the Iran war kicking off, like he would post over and over again, "Kill Khamenei now! Kill Khamenei now! Kill Khamenei now!" And now that they killed him and they've replaced him with like his grandson, I think
his son,
he's out. He's out today, and he's going, "Kill the other one now! Kill the other one now!" But like, how would you describe Mark Levine as like a right wing media figure? Because like,
well, I feel like he's the only, he's kind of like maybe like the greatest, like just like pure like right wing hawk that we have like left. I think there are obviously a lot of people who wanted this war, but I think they've sort of moderated. They don't come out and say just like blow it up. Whereas Mark Levine, I mean, every time I turn into, he calls him, the Great One is his nickname. Every time I tune into his show, he's like ranting about some reporter who gave him like a slightly critical remark. I mean, he's just an angry guy. And I think it seems as though even this war hasn't made him happy. He was demanding, I guess there's a House GOP convention in Florida this week. And he was like, they need to expel Tucker and Candace from the movement or we're going to lose the midterms.
Mark, I got news for you about that.
I don't think that's the main issue.
That's okay. Like that's one way to salvage the electoral future of the Republican Party coming up, because the polls are not looking good for them right now. The Candace Owens, Erika Kirk, the ongoing saga there. I mean, we mentioned this on the show, but like Candace, like, for all the people who have condemned her and like all the people who are like, Candace, no, you've gone too far. Candace, we have to like excommunicate her. This is crazy. Like she stays winning. And she has recently come out with like a sort of a new docuseries. Because like there was a sort of peace summit a while ago between her and Erika Kirk, where Candace came out of it and she seemed to be somewhat chastened and just being like, hey, like we're going to work together to salvage Charlie's legacy. That lasted about a second. I don't know. Because you talk about Candace's new series exposing the real Erika Kirk.
It's so good. I mean, that Peace Summit in early December, I mean, she came out and she's like, all right, Erika, satisfied all my conspiracy theories. We talked about it. There's peace. And 2 days later, she had this like totally discredited guy who said he had Erika meeting with like military snipers on a military base the day beforehand. So the peace did not last long.
Oh my God.
So the new docuseries is called Bride of Charlie, which is obviously I guess
pretty
a play.
good.
That's
pretty good.
That's not bad. I gotta say.
I guess a play on Bride of Chucky.
Yes.
But and so she's kind of promising like, we're really going to get to the bottom of this, this infamous grifter and deep state operative, Erika Kirk. But all this stuff, I mean, people say this a lot, but like watching one of these episodes, it's like you'll feel like you're having a stroke because she kind of will rattle something off and you're like, okay. And then like 10 minutes later, it's like, what? And what did that have to, what is that? That doesn't mean she assassinated her husband. For example, she'll say, Erika's parents, when they got divorced, they listed Erika's birth date as this, but then on her birth certificate, it lists it 3 days later. Okay.
Whoa. We're through the looking glass here, people.
Yeah, Erika Kirk, I don't know how it's like still a going concern after there was that tape of her going like, all right, y'all, we sure had some fun at my husband's funeral. Great work at the merch table. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sad our husband's dead. Who's coming to the after party, y'all? But out of anyone who's ever lived, she seems the most likely for her parents to forget her birthday. Like, that's just kind of the person and the type of person she is. It doesn't prove anything.
I mean, like, Will, you highlighted some of the stunning revelations here that Candace has uncovered about Erika Kirk. The divorce paperwork for Erika Kirk's parents slightly misstated the year they were married. One of Erika's ancestors was arrested for working for an illegal numbers racket 85 years ago. Erika Kirk was born. Okay, this is my favorite. Erika Kirk was born in a civilian hospital that was started by the military in the Civil War.
This is advanced parapolitics.
Yeah.
Very good.
And Erika Kirk once dressed as a bee in a photo taken of her while she was in daycare. Okay, I understand the implication of being like, Erika Kirk was born in a military hospital. The hospital she was born in was founded by the U.S. military in 1864 before, I don't know, just becoming a regular hospital. But what is the implication of her in a like sort of cute infant bee costume in preschool.
Well, and making Masonic hand signs at the time.
Oh, okay.
So here's the deal. So obviously, so she's making kind of like a trapezoid with her hands that Candace feels is Masonic. But the bee thing is, so in Utah, Mormons are very into bee and honeycomb, beehive iconography, because that's kind of how they see their church. It's like everyone's doing their role. So after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Candace kind of casts around and she's like, oh my gosh, there's like a bee in this company's logo, or there's a bee in this organization's logo. And so she became convinced that some sort of
the Freelancers Union, that's a beehive logo. That's exactly right there.
Where were they on the big day? Yep.
Yeah.
So she became convinced that there was like some sort of bee cult that might have been involved in the murder. And then when she saw this bee costume, she was like, oh my gosh, there it is.
Okay. Now I'm just like, my third eye is wide open here, Will. Okay, you remember the film Bee Movie?
Mm-hmm. Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, about bees suing humanity for a cut of the honey they've been taking. Created by Jerry Seinfeld, well-known Zionist and Jewish person. But like, Will, it goes on here. Like, it does seem to be Candace. Does seem to be implying that Erika Kirk is Jewish. I think like a lot of the sort of the thrust of this investigation is to like subtly imply that Erika Kirk is Jewish. So what's the evidence for that?
I mean, okay. Can I just say something? Can we leave anti-Semitism to the professionals? If you've seen Erika Kirk pre-plastic surgery, which a lot of people have really gotten bad plastic surgery, Kristi Noem being the head of that. I used to love how Kristi Noem looked, and now she looks like they ironed her face. She looks really fucked up. I really don't like what they did. But Erika had such a cute, like, Bavarian milkmaid nose. I loved her face. And now she has this horrifying, like, Family Guy thing. But in either event, like, no Jewish person has ever had Erika Kirk's face. Ever. She is her, if you want to talk about her ancestors, they were all like, their family reunions, everyone looks like Ralph Fiennes from fucking Schindler's List. There's like no way.
It's the classic Scandinavian square head look, but like, but
she's a real hoople head.
Yeah. But this is the touchstone here. Will, I'm just going to read from your piece here. It says, Owens' material actually often turns out to be quite bland. She spends a chunk of the first episode of Bride of Charlie focusing on whether Erika Kirk, whose father's family is Swedish, has been using the Swedish word morfar, mother's father, when she should be using the word farfar, father's father, to describe her paternal grandfather in Instagram posts. You write, a normal person might say to this, who gives a fuck? But to Owens, this is serious stuff. The morfar farfar scandal troubles me deeply, Owens said, apparently not in jest.
It's crazy.
Scandal?
The scandal.
We all know that this big scandal. I mean, at one point she's like, this doesn't make any sense because the grandfather would have corrected her. He said, no, I'm your farfar. Well, the post she's citing is about her grandfather dying. So he wouldn't have been around to say, hey, I saw what you posted on IG.
Well, that was her first assassination. Yeah, she killed her grandfather so it wouldn't correct her.
But also, like, Candace's former collaborators at the Daily Wire, like Ben Shapiro, I mean, like, look, they hired her, then they fired her. But, like, Ben Shapiro says now that, like, what Candace is doing to Erika Kirk is, quote, satanic. And, like, leaving aside my personal distaste for all of these people, I mean, it's like, yeah, like, if your friend got murdered and then, like, one of your ex-friends dedicated their entire life to attacking the widow of the person that was murdered, that would be like, that's pretty low. But that being said, like, they don't seem to have had much success in sort of disciplining their own audience or Candace's audience, or like the pool of right-wing media consumers to, like, stay away from this, or that it's all crazy, or that you shouldn't be platforming this, or you shouldn't be listening to Candace. Because, like, it seems like with all these things, like when the headmaster admonishes you, like, not to consume certain media, or this is dangerous, or a kooky conspiracy theory, that's like ringing the dinner bell to these people. Like, what do you make of their sort of increasingly desperate attempts to try to, like, head Candace off as the past before she keeps coming out with more damning far scandal material.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think like ever since Trump really got on the scene, and even before that, the right has really lost the ability to sort of like police what their audience believes. As long as it isn't like the craziest thing. I mean, you can see there. I mean, Ben Shapiro is someone who profited from having Candace in his company. I mean, this was after she made kind of some pro-Hitler remarks that he brought her in, and now he's saying, okay, but like this one time, you can't really believe her. For people on the right, that smacks of cancel culture. We saw this at the Turning Point convention in December, where Ben Shapiro gets up and sort of points out what you said, which is like, this is pretty twisted. This guy was like executed in front of the whole world, and now we're dragging his widow around and saying she murdered him and all this stuff. And then Russell Brand gets up and he goes, "Hey, I don't want to do any cancel culture here." And so there were a lot of people who got up and did that same thing, where they're saying, I think we can have both Ben Shapiro and Candace in the same party, which is, I don't think is really tenable. And I think the view counts certainly show who's winning. I mean, Ben Shapiro's are going down. All his commenters are saying, he sold out to cover up the Charlie Kirk murder, and Candace is thriving.
Well, it reminds me of how, I think this is part of a broader schism and a broader self-contradiction and then a broader coalition, which is, okay, we can issue hateful invective against everyone, against all types of immigrants, against Black people, against Latinos. We can say that Haitians are eating cats and dogs, but don't ever say anything about Israelis, nothing about Jews, and we can keep those things separated forever.
Yeah,
how can you do this thing where it's like, oh yeah, Tim Walz killed those like hapless fucking Minnesota state legislators that got domed by that insane guy, but like, how dare you talk about Erika Kirk, who she like, there aren't even that many sparklers on her funeral suit.
Yeah, I mean that's
it's
what
not
we're seeing.
that festive of a costume.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing this sense among, and I use this lightly, like sort of like the intellectuals of the right are getting sort of disgusted with their audience. And so, we've seen this in some cases with Richard Hanaya, who's like become a totally like weird kind of like lib-coded guy because he's just like, I'm sick of these idiots. But also, I think more importantly, people like James Lindsay, Conceptual James, Chris Rufo,
yeah.
And
I'd say like he would be the most the most sterling example of someone who, like the right-wing intellectuals, the book readers on the right, like they betray the absolute contempt they have for their audience because they're like, oh, I can program these dum-dums by saying that Haitians are eating people's cats. And then when called on it, I'll say, well, it's an issue and it's a way to get people to talk about it. But then like when you feed an audience of like nonstop bigotry and conspiracy theories, then when someone else programs them with things that you find distasteful or are getting out of hand, you're like, hey, it's getting too far now. And like, they're kind of this anti-intellectualism and conspiracy mongering has become a big issue only because nobody's fucking listening to Chris Rufo anymore.
Well, I'll give you another example. Tyler Oliveira, who's one of these YouTube, Nick Shirley types who kind of bangs around towns. He pushed a lot of the Haitian eating dog stuff. Then obviously you have Nick Shirley saying, Somalis are these welfare sponges. Then this Tyler guy goes to New Jersey and looks at the Orthodox Jews and he says, they're pulling welfare scams too. And suddenly everyone like Chris Rufo is saying, whoa, hold up. People have been promoting these earlier things.
I mean, we talked about this on the show before, but like, it seems like a big debate in the right is like whether you can have a political movement largely based on outright open hostility to every minority group. And the question is whether you can include or not include Jewish people in the, are they in the club or out? And it's just like, how, like, if your politics is going to be like outright like ethnic nationalism, in what case in history has that ever been like fomented in which Jewish people were not always become the target of the, as an out group to this kind of like, like I said, like ethno-nationalist politics. Like it seems like, people like Chris Rufo, like, and the people mad at Tyler Oliveira, they're like, oh, wait, hold on a second. We didn't mean Jewish people. We just meant Asians, Black people, Muslims, Arabs, Asians, South Asians, East Asians, Latinos, Central Americans. But we did not mean Jewish people. Like, guys, this has gotten crazy. This is out of hand now.
No, it's crazy. I mean, they fed into all of it, and now they're saying, you guys have crossed over a line here.
to that end, there was a story that came out over the weekend about yet another one of these sort of group chats getting leaked, and now this one involved members of the Florida State GOP, and like the name of the chat was "Gooning in Agharta," and that is where the humorous aspects of this story ceases, because the contents of this chat were just basically nonstop poisonous racism of, imagine in your head that's what they were saying. I mean, like calling black people the N-word, calling for nonstop death and torture of black people. But this is like the third or fourth one of these stories. Like how does the Florida GOP, what has their been response to this, and like what does this say broader about basically young Republicans in America today?
Yeah, I mean, and as I think you hinted at, like all of these people were Hispanic, needless to say, and so they're. I mean, I think what it says is something that's been talked about. Gosh, going back to Charlottesville, Alex Perrine wrote about this at the time. But that like the energy on the right that's attracting young people to be like professional Republicans is, I think, for the vast majority of them, this kind of racist stuff, this groiperism, this anti-Semitism, and that's why we keep seeing these group chats leak where privately they're just insanely racist. The Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, the Florida Republican Party, came out and said, "Oh, this is awful." But obviously these people didn't care when Nick Fuentes was dining with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, all these other instances we could point to. So I think there's this sense of like, sorry, kids, you blew up your spot. You got to go. You made it too explicit. But I don't think there's really like truly like deep concern about this.
It's just, one of the chats was titled "Uber Retards Yapping Incorporated." And like, I mean, this is something like, that we've talked about on the show, and I know you've covered, but like, it's the sense of like, it's nihilism, and like it's like guised in irony, or if like you can make it seem so absurd, it sort of inoculates you from like the fact that like you're giving yourself permission to just really let this kind of violent hatred out of you, and like expressing it in this kind of like meme language, like gooning in Agharta. I guess that's my question. Like, explain to our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with it what Agharta is, and like how did the sort of conspiracy theory, or I don't know, whatever mythical concept of Agharta become such a thing on the kind of neo-Nazi right wing?
I notice we don't need an explanation of what gooning is. Sounds good.
We've heard that before on the show.
So Agharta is kind of this idea of like a sort of like Nazi heaven, like maybe in the mountains. It's kind of like what the Nazis in like Indiana Jones, like the occult Nazis might have been looking for. And I think there are a lot of TikTok memes about like Agharta, this kind of like mountain redoubt for all white people.
I've seen a lot of ones of like Jeffrey Epstein escorting Charlie Kirk's like ghost to Agharta and like living there with Hitler. But like, no, I don't mean to correct you, Will, but like, I mean, I could be wrong here. I always thought Agharta was the hollow earth. It was like the kind of like paradise at the center of the earth, which is the hollow earth theory.
Part of it, though?
What?
It's part of like a cobbled together like SS occult mythology, right?
Yeah,
that involves a hollow earth.
I would defer to you on this.
Weird NOI stuff in there. I mean, people yell. Yakub is a timeless character. I can't wait till he's in the public domain.
Agharta could be a lot of places, but Hollow Earth sounds believable to me.
Spencer reminds me, Miles Davis had an album named Agharta.
Known Hyperborean Miles Davis.
But this is also like, it's just something very specifically Florida about this. Like, these are all like right-wing Miami Cubans who, as you mentioned, are, I don't know, by various criteria of racial categorization, like white, not white. I mean, this is certainly how they see themselves. But like, there does seem to be like, I saw a poll today. This was done by the Manhattan Institute, which is like, a right-wing think tank. And according to their polling, 54% of Republicans under the age of 50 believe that the Holocaust was in some way fraudulent, either exaggerated or did not happen at all, or was, the historians have been lying about it. And among breaking down by demographics, among young Republicans who most believe it, it is in fact Latino and Black Republicans who believe that the Holocaust is fake more than young white Republicans. But like still, overall, Republicans under 50, according to the Manhattan Institute, if you want to take them seriously, believe that the Holocaust didn't happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of these figures. I mean, obviously Nick Fuentes most prominently. I mean, I think even if they aren't coming out and say, the Holocaust is fake, there's a lot of people who are saying, the logistics don't make sense. I mean, Nick Fuentes was famously saying, could Cookie Monster, cook 6 million cookies at once or whatever.
Funny.
I mean, so yeah, right. I mean, so, and in fact, to your point about, Black and Latino Republicans, dating podcaster Myron Gaines, whose name is, of course, because you're admiring his gains in the gym. He was,
former
he got
DHS agent.
Yes, a former DHS agent. Make of that what you will. He was kicked out of the TPUSA convention for wearing one of these Cookie Monster shirts. So I think, I mean, as I think this chat would suggest as well, I think this is like pretty widespread thinking.
Well, it's a terrible new meaning to the term Latino tweets. Or Latina tweets. I'm sorry.
But it does seem to be that like there seems to be an emerging sort of multiracial neo-Nazi coalition, like kind of coalescing on the right.
I think that's real.
And on the surface, it is obviously very strange and like contradictory. But like I think like if you I don't know, roll it around in your head, like it does make a certain sense in terms of like who gets in and out of the club. And if you want to be in the club, the way to like, your sort of, I don't know, entrance to the VIP section is how willing you are to, I don't know, go full Nazi, or like how willing you are to attack attack and dehumanize the other out groups, which include most white people in this country, ironically.
Oh yeah.
Especially heritage Americans.
Yeah.
If we want to use that term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're talking a few days after Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, who I think is Black Latino, was, hugging Marco Rubio at the meeting of the Shield of the Americas, which, the fact that Enrique Tarrio was involved is kind of giving like Operation Condor vibes, these kind of like these sort of like would-be fascist figures. So I do think that, this kind of like Latino, the Black like far right groups I was just talking about Myron Gaines as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this Manhattan Institute poll too. And I was like, I guess slightly skeptical in how you reconcile it with like this overwhelming support for Israel and intervention in Iran among the GOP. But then I saw, and again, this is extremely anecdotal, but I saw a great screenshot of like a Republican guy arguing with like, just some random guy on Twitter. And they're arguing about Iran. And this guy said, the guy he was arguing with said, he tried to make a point using the Holocaust as an example. And the guy's refutation was, 1, the Holocaust literally didn't happen. 2, well, what about October 7th?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So like, I guess there is like some room to be like, yeah, a guy who thinks the Holocaust didn't happen, but also like we need to make these Ivy Leagues like less anti-Semitic and like go to war with Iran. If there is one thing that is true about America, and especially right-wing movements in America, it takes all kinds. It really does.
I guess it shouldn't be too surprising because like whether it's Jewish state or not, like if you are a fascist and like your dream for the world is more or less unrestrained war all the time against everyone, there's a lot to admire in the conduct of the Israeli state.
I mean, not for nothing, it's not like Israel is, or Israeli society for that matter, is really that well known for its great conduct and treatment of Holocaust victims. This is a pretty fucking nasty slang term for them over there.
Well, moving on to another bit of domestic political news. The ouster of Kristi Noem from the Department of Homeland Security. Kristi Noem is out, and Mark Wayne Mullen is in. And I wish I guys got to say, that's 2 first names. Like, well, what are you doing? Mark Wayne? Pick one. But Will, what was the like? Have you been following this? Like what led to Kristi Noem's ouster? Because like obviously like Minneapolis could not have gone worse for them. But like was it like sort of a combination of that and this like ludicrous corruption that's just been come to the fore as of late.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real issue for her was not like the corruption, but that she sort of said Trump had given her permission to be corrupt, where she said, Trump approved in her Senate hearing, they were asking her about this $200 million ad campaign about her riding on horseback. And they said, well, like, why did this happen? And she said, well, look, Trump approved it. And, whether that's true or not, it sort of seems like Trump is like, look, you can kind of do your grift, but don't put me on the hook for it. I have my own grifts going on. And
Yeah.
that kind of, and also like, I feel like the talk about her affair with Corey Lewandowski, this alleged affair, was just becoming like so crazy, like with her husband in the room when she's getting asked about it. And, I think she got the boot for that reason.
I wouldn't say I felt bad for her, but I did I put myself in her boots for a second, where that hearing where the guy was pointed out that Corey Lewandowski was drunk and got into a fist fight on the plane over her blanket or something. And her husband is in the row behind her, looking like Michael Douglas in Falling Down. There's no one has ever clenched his jaw harder. He needs an entire new set of molars. Imagine that happens, and then it's you immediately have to go home. You can't even be did they need me at the border? You can't go, I'll just give this a few days to cool down, this horrible public humiliation of my family and my husband. You immediately have to go home and sit in silence while you both watch Landman.
But well, I want to go back to the ad that a lot of the controversy swirls around. So Kristi Noem cut an ad for herself and the Department of Homeland Security that involved her riding on horseback. This was a political ad. I don't even know how long it was, but the budget was $200 million. What is she making? Avatar? What? How did she spend $200 million on that?
Well, that's what's so crazy about it. I mean, ProPublica has done some reporting on this. I mean, it's sort of inexplicable. I mean, I think it was this whole ad campaign. Part of it was her riding on the horse. Her one of her cronies' husbands.
What was the horse? Pegasus?
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the amount of waste there. I mean, the Washington Examiner just had this story about how they bought all of these cool DHS and ICE branded SUVs. But the issue is, as we've learned in Minneapolis, these guys can't drive around in branded SUVs. They have to be unmarked. And so basically they ordered millions of dollars worth of these cars. And now they're saying, well, these are totally useless.
We've been drawing a lot of equivalences to the sick man of Europe, end of the Ottoman Empire era of woke 1 and Trump 2. Isn't it so appropriate that the version of the Eternals for Trump 2 and anti-woke 1 is the Kristi Noem DHS commercial? That's her Kumail Nanjiani shortening his life by 50% and spending they probably went over budget by the same ratio.
It's Kingo.
Kingo, Sprite, Fatso, all my favorite guys.
Well, they both kind of went through a dramatic, image transformation, body transformation, expecting this big franchise. I'm going to be in the public eye for a long time now.
Yeah, it says, Ms. Noem said Mr. Trump had tasked her with getting the message out to the country. Asked if Mr. Trump had signed off on the campaign before the ads aired, Ms. Noem responded, we had that conversation, yes, before I was put in a position and sworn in and confirmed, and since then as well. And I just love the idea, getting the message out. What did she think that meant? You're head of DHS.
The message of Kristi Noem's existence.
Yeah, the message of that you can ride a horse and there's some sort of splendid vista in South Dakota. But you would think getting the message out as head of DHS would be I don't know, hosting a press conference. Why the need for this ad? It's just advertising that DHS exists and she's in charge of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the ads were supposed to be sort of saying hey, you better self-deport, or we're coming for you, on my horse. I mean, the spending. I mean, we didn't talk about they bought the jet for her and Corey Lewandowski to travel on. That had the private bedroom.
They had a private bedroom in the private jet.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just use the jet that Qatar gave Donald Trump? I mean, Will, what happened to Doge? What happened to the Department of Doge? Where are they? Where are they at? Yeah.
Imagine what she told the husband Like, why is there a fucking bedroom on the jet that's for you and Corey Lewandowski? He has narcolepsy. Oh my God. Look, Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem's husband, Kristi Noem for that matter. Check out the Interpol song Mind Over Time. It's about this exact situation. I think it will get you all through this.
And it wasn't just the jet or the $200 million campaign ad either, because like when she was testifying recently, right before her ouster, there was this other, like another $143 million government contract that was given to a company that did not exist 8 days before the contract was granted to them and does not have an address associated with the company. And the only person like on the legal documents is someone who worked for Kristi Noem, and she was governor of South Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And you know, it's crazy too with this. You have to remember when Kristi Noem took over DHS, she made a rule that every expenditure over $100,000 had to be personally approved by her for Doge-related reasons. So you have like the Texas flood, and they couldn't get people out there for repair operations.
Yeah, because they were pinching pennies about like how many sandbags they could fucking buy.
Exactly. And then they're just like blowing all this money on all these crazy ad campaigns.
I mean, like clearly though, Kristi Noem thought I think this was like a campaign ad for her in 2028, right? Like I think this is very clearly like her spending $200 million to establish a national brand for herself, you know, in anticipation of a presidential run. Because you know, I mean, like why else would any politician be filmed on horseback if not to run for president?
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, I feel like a lot of the cabinet, you know, members are getting ready. I mean, RFK Jr. certainly, you know, and so, you know, and he's
going to run for president again. RFK Jr.
I think so.
Oh my God. Oh my God. More of that.
The Daily Mail just had a story about his sexual magnetism. So, you know, it's sort of like,
I mean, you know, you can scoff at that, but like, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, he's like, he's
ruined a lot of lives because of that magnetism.
Yeah.
Listen, Axis of Resistance. We love your work. We hope you love ours. The head of America, our most important guy, his name is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
But like, you know, RFK Jr., like, I mean, obviously it's like Rubio and JD Vance have got to be like, those two have got to be the front runners at this point, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, but you know, at the same time, like, I feel like there's a lot of talk about, you know, Vance, does he have what it takes? Famously, Clavicular said Newsom would mog him. So, you know, there's all kinds of real concerns he's facing.
And I guess finally, since you brought him up, like, how are things going in the Mog wars? You know?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I feel like we haven't heard from old Clavicular in a little bit. I mean, he's definitely kind of bobbing around out there. He had his big, you know, trip to New York a few weeks ago where he hung out with the Dime Square people and like the Peter Thielites. And, you know, I watched a bit of that live stream. It was pretty grim. You know, it was like a lot of kind of like rich guys coming up and being like, oh, hey, Clavicular, like come hang out with us. And he was just like, we got to get away from these foids.
Who is the guy who had his wig taken off on the live stream?
Androgenic.
Androgenic, yes.
But actually, like that androgenic guy, like, I mean, some of these Mog guys, they'll like flip out on people. It's crazy. I mean, Clavicular is definitely the most level-headed of them. And I mean, he ran a guy over in a Cybertruck. But like, you know, like there have been points where like some girl will just like kind of look at him at the club and be like, you suck, to like Androgenic. And he'll be like, yo, like just screaming.
That Androgenic, the thing with his hat getting that seemed like a bit to me. I don't know. I mean, to me, a lot of that stuff, it just seems like it's like even goofier pro wrestling. It seems like they're in on it. If you know, I mean, Will, you would know better than I would, but that seems to be my read of it as a.
I think at this point,
as an internet veteran,
we're getting away from the real honest mogging. And I think it's getting into this, but you're totally right. I mean, definitely like the second wig snatch was fake. You know, we got to go back to when Clavicular was a bouncer in Cape Cod, taking like huge amounts of muscle relaxants just to talk to a girl. I mean, that's like the real looks maxing culture.
Oh my, wait, he was about. Oh my God, he's like my Wario, or I'm his. I don't know. Such a similar trajectory, he and I.
I don't know. Like whenever I see this, it's like it's updates from like one of the streaming platforms. Like I think it's Kick. And whenever I just see like it's these constant updates that come across my Twitter stream, and they're like dispatches from like some sort of Looney Tunes version of the Wild West, where it's just like the Mog power ranking. So they're like, ASU frat leader has just been demogged by like a Gorilla Chad. And it's just,
I mean, compared to the other, do you know what the other stuff on Kick is? The other stuff on Kick is like, there's this like 62-year-old former pimp named Mr. Based who just exploits an autistic guy and like attempts to assault girls on camera. And, like there are guys who are just like committing statutory like on stream. Like Kick is like a live streaming service that would be on SVU in 2011. Like it is something that Don Kraken would contend with. It is one of the darkest fucking places on the internet. It would really test my free speech absolutism if I were president. I would immediately strike it down. But like what those guys are doing is so much more innocent and okay compared to what everyone else is fucking doing, which like if it is not just like rampant sex crimes, it's trying to encourage 11-year-olds to steal their parents' credit cards and gamble.
Yeah, when you said
I think hitting your face with a hammer,
I was like, this is cool. But
he was a pretty well-known guy in the early 2010s. He claims to have invented the girlfriend experience.
Wait a second. I thought girlfriends invented that.
I did too. But yeah, no, his name is, God, I hate saying this, Mr. Based.
I don't know, like whenever I see it, it just seems to be like a sort of a live sort of participatory nationwide Harmony Korine film of which we're all involved in. And that at any moment you could find yourself a part of like Spring Breakers Part 2 featuring ASU frat leader Androgenic and like just a cast of wonderful, wonderful freaks and grotesques.
Maybe it's because when I was their age, when I was like a 22-year-old bouncer, I would do things like, I hope he's listening. My friend Dirty Mike, I hope you're doing well. When we were helping him train for his first amateur boxing match, we found this weird Chinese peptide from a research chemical website that was still on the surface web because this is like 2012, 2013. And you would take it via oral syringe and it would help you cut weight while retaining muscle. But the side effect was that it made you nearly blind during the night, which was, in retrospect, my job of working at a bar till 3 a.m. was not good for that. But it really, my cum gutters were razor sharp. So I think I just like instinctively defend these guys because I know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And at least compared to like the other guys on Kick, I think like hitting yourself with a hammer, fucking shooting yourself up with all these chemicals. Listen, I don't recommend people do it, but when you're 22, that like you are very resilient. I don't suggest that you make yourself infertile. I didn't do that, but like, hey, shit, it's better than a lot of other stuff I see on that website. I don't know. I wouldn't say I support all these guys' decisions, but I am it could be worse is my point of view.
All the kids from Gummo have grown up and are on research chemicals and they look fantastic. They're mogging everyone. They've gotten out of the bathtub and they're on the streets, framing each other.
I was an early mogger. I was mogging in the age of like maroon pants and American Apparel. I remember I didn't know if the research chemical was working until one time at work. These two girls got into an argument and they were explaining what was going on to another bouncer. And they said, yeah, and then this, and they looked at me and went, this skinny white boy came over. And I went, me? Are you talking about me? Totally forgot what was going on. But yeah, no, I mean, it's young men will always do it. Young men will always get chemicals that should not be ingested. for their cum gutters. And
Are you referring to me, man?
Me, madam, are you referring to me?
Let's leave it there for today. Will Sommer, I want to thank you for joining us today. Please check out Will's work over at The Bulwark, and we will include links in the episode description.
Yeah,
Thanks again, Will.
Thanks for having me on.
I'll
Our pleasure.
catch
Very glad
you
to
up
have
at
you
the
back.
next Council of the Wills meeting.